Hey everybody, welcome to Hope for Our Times, and I am here. We're going to have a great program today with IDF Commander, Tank Commander and Major David Towle is joining me today. Thank you, David, for joining all of us and bringing in your expertise to the conversation, because man, oh man, things are shaping up in Israel. And it is just really something else to watch, all the different developments, including today. So how are you?
Well, fine, and thanks, Tom, for having me. And yes, things are moving around all over the Middle East. By the way, not only in Israel, but in how do you say, the outer reaches outside. So we got a lot to talk about what's going on, not only on the ground in Israel, and I don't know how much you want to get into Israeli politics, which is a very, very fascinating subject right now.
I would like to get into the politics. In fact, I'm going to ask you about that first, because what I do want to get to, there was a embassy in Damascus that was taken out by Israel earlier today, the Iranian embassy.
Well, classic answer to everything is yes and no. Well, it is an Iranian facility, but it's not the actual embassy.
Oh, it's not. Okay.
Meaning it was the building, literally the building next to the embassy.
Okay.
And somebody, I think Israel's already accepted responsibility, took down that building very accurately and managed to bring that building down literally probably about 20 feet from the embassy without bringing the embassy down, which is another, how do you say, another poke in the eye.
Well, it's very interesting because things are definitely escalating. When we were there just last week, there were all these evacuees at every hotel we were at, and they can't go back home, and we see things escalating there. I'd like to ask you where you think that is going. And I know Hezbollah is a much different threat than Hamas was, from what I understand.
Okay. You want to go inside out or outside in?
I'd like to go inside out. So
well, let's start off with the inside. Okay. Israel is around Rafiah. Rafiah is on the southern part of the Gaza Strip, and what's happening since this war, since the 7th of October war, was that Israel has gone in and pushed the Hamas fighters from city to city, first from the northern part, then from Gaza City, then from the central part, then from Khan Yunis, and now they're posed around it. And when you push from one direction, all of the Hamas forces move in the other direction, and there's one area on the corner of the Gaza Strip called Rafah or Rafiah that literally sits on the border with Egypt. And that's the last city that Israel hasn't gone into. Which means all of the Hamas fighters are there. The Hamas leadership is there. The hostages are probably there. And probably about 1 million refugees from the north are all there. And Israel is posed around something the size of, I don't know, I live in Lakewood in California, something the size of a suburban town here. And that's all sitting on the edge right now. The Hamas is not giving up. We were kind of hoping that the Hamas would surrender. They're not giving up. They're ready to fight to the death on all this. This is going to be a Hitler in the bunker kind of event, it looks like, until this is over. So Israel is poised to go in, but in the meantime, there's a hostage negotiation that actually Hamas is playing with, saying, we'll give you some of the hostages. In return for some ceasefire, they want a complete ceasefire. Stop the war, we'll return some of the hostages, and we'll talk about the rest. Israel is saying, we're not going to stop the war in any case. You want a temporary ceasefire, we'll do that for some of the hostages. That is still going on. And so we're on the edge of going into Rafiah. Hamas knows we're coming. We know we're going. And the world is trying to stop us. And your government,
Yeah, I saw Kamala Harris the other day threaten Israel if they went into that region, that area, a threat. And I'm looking, going, the pressure against Israel to not continue forward. The way my assessment is that Israel is, in a sense, they're damned if they do and damned if they don't. So if they stop moving forward, they're still criticized. I mean, there's so much anti-Semitism that is everywhere. If they don't do anything, they're already in trouble with the world. In my mind, they need to finish the job, and the political opinion from the West is already against Israel anyways.
Well, we had support from the West for about probably a week. I think we talked about that way in the beginning. So we probably had a week of support, but it's just been deteriorating since then. I have dual nationality, and I'm having a serious problem negotiating my feelings about how to deal with my nationality or my support of Israel, and how to deal with my government here that is literally throwing Israel under the bus. Now, don't get me wrong. As of now, the Biden administration has been supporting Israel. I mean, a bill was just now passed through the Congress that kind of sent a couple of F-35s and a couple of other things in Israel's direction. So there still is, we still are America's ally, but that is slowly eroding. And what I'm worried about, and we should all be worried about, I mean, I'm worried about as an Israeli, and I'm worried about as an American, is that Biden, in order to win the election, again, is going to completely throw Israel under the bus, because his Democratic support base, his Democratic power base, will not give him the support if he doesn't totally turn his back on Israel. And it looks like that's the direction that we're going. And if I understand what's going on here in the States, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, Trump is going to win the elections unless the Democrats do something crazy like this.
Well, yeah, and I can't really comment on this network without getting in trouble, but I look at what happened in the last election, and I'll just leave certain things there. But when it comes to Israel and you know, the majority of Jews, I just read this morning, in America are not pro-Israel. And I think it was like 66 or 67% of Jews in America. And so, I mean, you're living in America now, you're in the Los Angeles area. What's your sense on that?
Well, there's two things. First of all, I'll go biblical on you. And ever since Exodus, there were the Jews who didn't buy into the program. I mean, ever since Exodus, and go back to the beginning of the story, why did we leave Egypt? We don't like the food. We don't like the manna. Where are we going? You know, and there were Jews who were literally complaining. I mean, even into the point where, you know, Israel, when Moses comes down the mountain with the tablets, the world, you know, Western civilization as we know it, connection to God as we know it, and they're dancing around the golden calf because they kind of wanted to return to where we are. So I'm not surprised that there are Jews that are not on the program. Let's put it this way. These are the Jews who have decided to throw their lot, or to make their world here in the United States of America. And again, most of them are left-leaning, most of them are woke, most of them are progressive. And if they were not woke, progressive, and left-leaning, then they would be supporting Israel. So they're buying into their international nationalism more than they are into their support of Israel. But there is a movement, or we're seeing that more Jews, maybe not in the major cities, but more Jews are reconnecting to Israel. And let's put it this way, it doesn't really matter. And maybe one of the things that the people here need to understand more than anything, Israel's going to do what we need to do, because our existence depends on it, okay? Whether we have the support of our brothers who live in New York, or we have the support of our friends who live in Washington, or we have the support of the rest of the world, it doesn't really matter. That's what we need to do. And again, go back to the 12 spies that actually toured the land and said, oh, we don't need to do this, it's scary. And there were only 2 of them that said, this is what we need to do, and they were the ones that were right. So what can I say?
Yeah. All right. So I want to come back to this conversation about the direction everything is going, and talk about what happened in the north today, and then also Eilat, you know, what happened down there that I think everybody needs to be aware of. But let me ask you about Israel politics first.
Ooh.
So, okay. So sounds like I just dropped the bomb. So
Well, my thing is called the Balagan Connection. If you want a definition of Balagan, then Israeli politics are a Balagan.
So, by the way, to connect with David, go to the Balagan Connection. I know many of you already do, but please go check out his YouTube page by that name and like and subscribe. Listen, the only way we really get out there, whether it be David or myself, is it's the algorithms. And it's free to like, it's free to subscribe, and free to share. And the algorithms pick up on that, and it helps us to be able to grow our reach and reach people with the truth about what's going on. And it's free to be able to do that. So we would really appreciate like, subscribe, and share. Really, it really might not seem like much to you guys, but it's huge to us on our end if you just do those small things. So David's is the Balagan Connection. All right, the Balagan of politics in Israel.
For those of you who don't know, Israel is a parliamentary multi-party system, which means we vote for parties. The parties create a coalition. The coalition supports a government. And that's the basic dynamic, which means Benjamin Netanyahu is a prime minister because he has a coalition of a majority of the parties that are supporting him and give him the right to create the government. The reason that's an issue is that it makes our politics much more complicated. The prime minister, as the commander-in-chief, doesn't only have to deal with Congress and the Senate, he has to deal with all the different factions of his party. Benjamin Netanyahu's party tends to be a more right-leaning, more religious party right now, which is why a lot of people are blaming what's happening on the politics in Israel, by the way, and that's a very interesting kind of dynamic. And a lot of people think that what's happening in Gaza is not connected to Israel as a whole, but is a political maneuver on the side of the prime minister. You have to be somebody who doesn't understand anything about Israel, including Joe Rogan, by the way, who said something really weird a little while ago, to understand that it's not a political maneuver. I mean, line up all the Israelis in a line and ask them, do we have to finish off Hamas? They're going to say yes, because if we don't, we can't live here. So it's not a Benjamin Netanyahu issue. It is an existential issue, but our enemies are turning it into politics. That being said, it's not like our politics are very, very simple. So on one hand, you have the families of the hostages who are telling him, do whatever you have, stop the war. We don't care about anything. We want our hostages back. And it's sad that the Hamas is using the families of the hostages also as part of their political maneuvering. On the other hand, you have Benjamin Netanyahu with his right-wing religious party, which has been told by the legal system that in a country where there is a draft, meaning everybody goes to the army at the age of 18, it's not fair that you don't draft the ultra-religious Orthodox Jews. And it's become an illegal issue because it's against our Constitution, and the legal system has pushed that into the political system. So he's about to lose his coalition because his coalition is being held up by the ones who don't want to go into the draft. But during this war, more and more people are saying we need soldiers in the army. I mean, we're going to be fighting on two fronts. So there's those two factions that are putting pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu's coalition government. And he's trying to kind of swim in all of that. And those two are impacted by the war, but not our direct result of the war. So we might be heading to elections in the near future, which is going to be a whole different dynamic too.
So Benjamin Netanyahu, there's a good chance he'll be eliminated from what I've read.
Yes.
Okay, now with that, let me ask you on you have the ultra-Orthodox or the Haredi, correct?
Yeah, so, the Haredim.
Okay, the Haredim. So with them, isn't there a significant percentage of them that don't believe that Israel really has a right to exist in the current state? And was it because they believe the Messiah is the one who has to establish the nation? Is that correct?
So if we're gonna kind of step into the creation of the state of Israel, for most Christians, me among them, you and probably most of the people watching us, it was a messianic biblical prophetic event. And you open up your Bible, you see this is something that had to happen. But a lot of the more Orthodox, separated from the world Orthodox, believe that the creation of the state of Israel was not the prophetic messianic event that they've been waiting for, and they're waiting for literally the Messiah to come down to heaven to earth, just like in the book of Zechariah, and actually take over, politically, military take over the world. And because that hasn't happened, they don't believe that the state of Israel is the fulfillment of the prophecies that they're waiting for. If you can,
yeah.
So they're the ones who are sitting in Babylon, if you want, for a nice comparison, and don't agree that what Ezra and Nehemiah are doing, going back to the land and rebuilding, is what they should do. They say sitting, and there were those who sat in Babylon and say, we're waiting for the Messiah to bring us back. We're not going to make that happen. And they do not support the state of Israel. They do not support the economy of Israel. They do not support the Israeli military. They do support the Jewish people, and they believe that if they sit in their yeshiva and pray, then they've done their role. What we need now is soldiers. And what we need now is them to join the economy after they finish their military service and pay taxes, which they don't do this and they don't do that. But they do play in the political arena, and they are the ones who are supporting Benjamin Netanyahu's government. So that is the political situation that Israel is in right now.
So this is causing, I would guess, a lot of people having some anger towards the religious community.
Definitely.
In Israel.
And there's a growing split inside the Israeli society of support for the religious and those who are against that, especially when so many young men are dying in the war every day. 1, 2, 3 men. I mean, I think we've lost altogether something like 550 soldiers in the battle, in the fighting itself. Wow. Yeah. That's a growing. But here's the problem. Our enemies see that and say, okay, now Israel is weak. And I think they're going to be making a mistake.
Well, okay, they're saying Israel is weak. At the same time, I read the Joe Rogan statements, and he's just one of the many now that are very public and have huge platforms that are, they're definitely against Israel. They might even say they're not, but I read what they say. And it's rather troubling because public opinion definitely seems to be in the West against Israel. And the enemy going, okay, Israel has these internal problems with the politics and with the religious community. They're weak. But at the same time, you say, hey, you're underestimating Israel, and we will be strong and we will do the job.
Well, let's put it this way. If you look at what's going on and maybe, okay, so before I do this, let's zoom out a little bit to see what else is going on, because I'm going to say there are 3 main camps, for lack of a better word, in the Muslim world. You have the ISIS, Al-Qaeda camp on one side. You have the Muslim Brotherhood camp on the other side. But the main, resistance camp right now is the Shia radical Islamic camp that is actually circled around Iran, circled around the Iranian revolutionary regime, but is actually spread its tentacles out to the rest of the Middle East. So Hezbollah, for instance, in the north is part of that. I'm going to call it a camp, for lack of a better word. It's based on Iran, but a lot of the Houthim in Yemen are part of that camp. Hezbollah is part of that camp. And there are different factions, actually, even in Iraq, that are part of that camp. So what's happening is the line is blurring between the Arab nations, Syria. Syria is a free-for-all right now. Lebanon, which is basically not a country as a country would function anymore. Yemen, which is not a country as a function. But these different camps are playing in this political arena. By the way, the 4th camp in the Middle East, or the 4th dynamic in the Middle East, is Saudi Arabia, the moderate Muslim nations, and Israel. So you've got 3 Islamic camps and 1 moderate camp, which Israel, for instance, is a part of. But here's the thing: Israel's winning. Hezbollah thought they were going to press the button and the whole thing's going to, Hamas thought they were going to press the button and the ring of fire was going to encircle Israel. It didn't happen. It didn't happen for a lot of reasons. Israel is stronger than they thought it was. Israel was willing to go further than they thought they would. And the Muslim world did not throw its chips into this poker game the way they thought they were. So Hezbollah is shooting from the north, but not really opened up a war. The Palestinians in the West Bank haven't risen up. The Arab world hasn't risen up. The only people fighting for Hamas today are American Christians. I mean, it's ludicrous. But the thing is this: they realize that this is ending. So Iran is turning up the pressure to put pressure on Israel, and basically at this very unique position, turning up the pressure to put pressure on America, to put pressure on Israel, to put pressure to stop the war, because the only thing that's going to save the Hamas now is American military political boundaries, for lack of a better word. And here's the problem, though. It doesn't look good.
No, it doesn't. Not to me.
It doesn't look good when Israel is winning. It doesn't look good when this little tiny nation is not bowing down. It doesn't look good when Jews stand up. And that connects to the Jews in the United States who are saying, we as Jews would rather be underground. We don't want to be strong. We don't want to be this. We don't want to this. We'd rather stay underground. And when Israel stands up and says, no, we're going to stand up for ourselves, that doesn't look good for the rest of the world. And again, I know what channel I'm on. That doesn't look good when God's people are being strong, because somebody wants God's people to be weak. And that's part of the dynamic we're looking at.
That's exactly what the dynamic is that's going on here. And we see just this really unbelievable rise in anti-Semitism, which I want to get to. I'm curious as to your thoughts on that. Maybe we'll get to that in a few more minutes. You're in Los Angeles right now, but you'll be in Israel shortly. I'd really like your thoughts on what you've seen in Los Angeles. Maybe none personally, but I mean, I look at it every day. Our comments are just full of anti-Semitic comments. I'm sure today is going to be no exception to that. But with this, as we look at what happened in the north, and then I want to move down to Eilat, because these are, to me, in my mind, these are both really big deals right now. So in the north, we have, I have this article where it says here, Iran says Israel bombed its embassy in Syria, killing a top commander. Can you work through that and give some facts here? And I'd like to hear your opinion on, will this cause things to escalate in the north?
Yes and no. Let's start off with what exactly happened.
Okay.
The Iranians, in order to spread their tentacles around the Middle East, created an organization that's called the Jerusalem Brigades. Now, what does Iran have to do with Jerusalem? Again, the only basis for the Iranian regime to justify its existence is if it is perpetrating the spread of Islam, the greatness of Islam, the grandeur of Islam. And the only way that they can do that is by being the main focal point of the struggle against Israel. Because Israel is the greatest, bashing point for Muslims in the world. The existence of the state of Israel. That's why they can't come to an agreement. So they created an organization called the Jerusalem Brigade that's job is to start to liberate Jerusalem. It's called the El-Quds Brigade, and they've had functionaries in Lebanon. They've had functionaries all over the place. They're spreading this radical Islamic idea. So it's a semi-military. It's a parallel to the Iranian government. And their building, the El-Quds building, was literally the building right next to the Iranian embassy in Damascus. And that was blown up. And the head of the El-Quds brigades, or the head of the El-Quds, died in that attack. So they didn't blow up the Iranian embassy. They blew up a building next to it that is not officially an embassy, but that is part. So that's actually what happened. And here's the thing. Okay, as a result of that, and maybe let's tie that into what happened in the South. About a couple of hours ago, an unmanned drone, low flying, very, very slow flying, which makes it very hard to detect, hit the naval base in Eilat in the southern part of Israel.
Israeli naval base.
Israeli naval base, sorry, Israeli naval base in Eilat. So we're having to deal with that. That's the first time that they've actually gone through our defenses in Eilat. Didn't do any damage, and I would kind of consider it more a pinprick than an actual attack. It's not something. And they did that in reaction and retaliation, and they shot that out from Iraq, not Iran.
Wow.
Iraq.
Wow.
They shot. We know. Okay. And in order to get to our airspace, it had to cross over Saudi airspace, Jordanian airspace, until it got to us. It went through all of those anti-air defense systems until it hit Israel. Now, I want to stress something. It wasn't an attack that would change the war, but it was an attack that says we can hit you on your own land. But that's how this war is being fought. This is not a real war like World War II, where, I mean, there's a show now, I think, on Netflix about the bomber squadrons that went into Europe during World War II. I mean, you know, and thousands of bombers going into into Europe to bomb out, the economic capability of the Nazi Germany to engage in war. And we're not talking about that kind of war. It's a war on the screen. So they can say we hit Israel, but it doesn't really do anything. Israel, on the other hand, is hitting the actual commanders. I mean, if you're a commander fighting against Israel, you know that you can't get life insurance on any insurance company. So we're hitting the commanders and they're pinpricking, but on the media, it weighs the same. And here's part of the problem, which connects to what we're talking about. Okay, it's a media war, and in a media war, it doesn't matter what's really happening. What matters is who gets more likes. So if Joe Rogan is saying something that is completely wrong, it's carrying more weight because he's got a following of how many? Okay, yeah, and you get that. So if even if Jews say something that's completely wrong. So the rhetoric, the lies are complete. I mean, Israel is indiscriminately bombing Gaza. That's not true. But it doesn't matter because if somebody who has enough likes is saying it, the media kind of carries that weight. And Tom, this is what's happening in our world. Okay, the deceiver has become stronger, not because he's got more followers, but because the people that follow him have more likes. And that's kind of weird.
That is it's a very strange place to be. It's not about facts.
No.
It's about likes. I think of the kingdom of Antichrist that's coming. People are going to follow him. He's going to be exceptionally charismatic. He's going to have more likes than anybody. But that's another subject. And I want to ask you about Haifa, because the threat against Haifa and a couple of other things in a second. But first of all, I just want to give a shout out to everybody who joined us in Israel. I know y'all had a great time. You told me you did. By now you should be rested. I'll send you out an email here in the next few days. And then also to everybody in Indiana, Calvary Chapel Lafayette with Pastor Joe Bell. God bless you guys. It was great being there. And it was great being at Living Way with David Zamora, the church out there in Fontana, California. This Saturday, I'll be at Eagle Forum in Buena Park at a conference there with Alex Newman. You can check it out on our website, hopeforourtimes.com. And I'll also be at 412 Temecula this Sunday morning. I'm excited about being able to do that too. There's a lot going on. So check out things, everybody. Love to meet you guys at any of these places. And with that, David, again, before I get into Haifa, and by the way, Kurt is in the, Pastor Kurt Reed is in the chat room. And he's going to be joining me live tomorrow, everybody. So I'm sure Kurt would probably love to have questions about what we're talking about today, David. Shout out to you, Kurt. Thanks for joining us. We're going to take your questions here in just a minute. But again, you can follow David at Balagan Connection. Make sure to listen again, everybody. It might sound trivial to you all, but it's huge to us, and we really appreciate it. Like, share, subscribe. They are really big. And also hit the notifications. It helps us with the algorithms to be able to get the word out. And I know it might not sound like much to you guys, but it is really, really big to us to be able to get the word out.
Like we're saying, in a world of likes, we, the God-fearing majority, for lack of a better word, have to weigh in with our likes as much as the enemy is doing that.
Yeah. Amen. I would say God-fearing minority. Do everything that we can. Because there's a lot of people that are against. Hey, okay, so Haifa, David, as I look at that, we look at the north. Hezbollah has a lot more tunnels than Hamas. Hezbollah is a much bigger threat. They actually have rockets plus missiles, missiles that could reach as far as Jerusalem. Is that correct?
Yep. But here's my question. Why isn't Hezbollah pressed the button? They're doing the minimum of the minimum that they can to say we're doing something without actually doing something. And there's a lot of kind of engagement about why the Hezbollah is staying out. It might be some long-term plan to start something bigger. It might be because I think Iran has realized that its proxy in the Gaza Strip, the Hamas, was gone. They've lost it. Okay, and if they push the button and start an all-out war with Israel, their proxy in the north, in Lebanon, and the Lebanese proxy is much, much more important to them than the Hamas proxy. One is because the Lebanese proxy, the Hezbollah, is Shiite, their version of Islam. Two, they're sitting in the main, I'm going to say, free-for-all, which is Syria, Lebanon, where ISIS is still playing. And by the way, the attack, I don't know if you know, the attack in Moscow was an attack by fundamentalist Islamic elements in Moscow. So they're fighting, and they need the Hezbollah to stay intact. And they're afraid that if they do push that button, Israel will wipe them off the map no matter what. Okay. Israel's going to pay a terrible price. But they have decided not to push that button. And I think I've said this even on your channel before. Every day that they don't shows me that they probably won't. Meaning they're so... I think this round is going to end with the destruction of Hamas in Gaza and this Cold War that is going on in the rest of the Middle East. I personally believe that the main reason Iran hasn't pushed the button on the Hamas and even on the Houthis is that they're waiting for the nuclear option. Meaning,
interesting.
They're waiting. I mean, think about what would have happened in this scenario, Hamas, Hezbollah, and everything, if Iran had a nuclear option, if Iran had a nuclear capability. The nuclear capability, even if you don't actually use it, completely changed the dynamic and the force behind what you do on the ground. And we saw that in the Cold War. We saw how the Soviet Union press forward to get a nuclear option the minute they realized that the United States happened, because they can't play on the international arena if they don't have the same, and again, even if it's not used. So Iran wants to be a bigger player in the Middle East, and they cannot do that without the nuclear option. And I think that's the reason, or that's what they're waiting for right now. And look at what's happening. We haven't talked about Iran's nuclear bomb for what? Since this thing started off. And if the Netanyahu government's main focus, the Israeli government's main focus was on the Iranian bomb, then they have managed to shift the focus away from that. And now think about all of this happening in the Middle East if there was a nuclear warhead sitting somewhere in downtown Tehran.
So what you're saying then is, like with Gaza, for example, Israel gets distracted with this, distracted with some things in the north, distracted with Eilat and the Houthis. You have all of these distractions while you have Iran, the puppet master, is still continuing to move forward with their nuclear pursuits.
Not only Israel is distracted. I mean, think about this. You can't come to the German government and say, listen, we need to take care of the Iranian problem. Right now, the German government is going to say, wait a minute, you're doing genocide in Gaza. I mean, what are you talking about? I mean, Iran has quit being the bad guy, if you think about it now. And I think very shrewdly, I mean, your government. I mean, we were talking about when Trump was in power, there was how do you say, a dynamic of holding back Iran, cutting off funding, not allowing Iran to spread its terror to the rest of the world. It's gone. The Biden administration, nobody cares about what Iran does right now. As long as they're not killing, whatever, nobody cares. Even what happened with the Houthis, I mean, Iran has gotten scot-free out of everything. They've stopped world shipping through the Bab el-Mandeb, and nobody's talking about their role in doing this. And I think the deceiver is pulling off another deception.
So with Iran, if they are able to fully develop their nuclear threat, I mean, what's Israel going to do at that point? I mean, Israel has the Samson option, where they've always had. If you're going to take us out, we're going to take you out. But does Israel strike first? You know, I mean, for years, been watching how Israel has taken out certain things with Iran in the development of their nuclear capabilities. But, you know, where's this going to go? Because if it keeps going like it is, you know, it will be this major, huge, much bigger than it is right now.
If, again, to use the Cold War analogy, okay, the minute you go into a Cold War, then the whole concept of, I think the United States, I think it was called back in the 70s, the 60s and 70s, it's called MAD, okay, mutual atomic destruction. And the minute you go down that route, okay, if we get into a MAD scenario with Iran, meaning we can destroy them, you know, completely, but they can also, I mean, one nuclear device in downtown Tel Aviv would be enough to finish off Israel as an entity, as a nation. The minute we have this mutual destruction, then the wars are not being fought directly between us and Iran. The wars are being fought between us and Hezbollah, between us and. The thing is this, Israel doesn't have any proxies. So who's going to fight on our side? And we're looking at what's going on, and this is similar to what was happening in the United States and to the United States during the Cold War. So the United States started creating proxies. I mean, think about, you know, South Vietnam, North Vietnam. Think about South Korea, North Korea. I mean, you get this whole dynamic. We might be heading into that kind of situation in the Middle East. And again, I know what kind of channel I'm sitting on. Think about all that going on, and then somebody walks up and says, I can solve all of this. I can bring everything together and have peace. I mean, because, you know, we're sitting here feared for our existence. They're sitting there feared for our existence. And then comes somebody says, here, I mean, you don't need to be afraid anymore. Hand it over to me. I will be responsible for the peace in the world, and we're getting a situation, I think, that lines up in a very specific direction.
I can get this all under control. Just go with me. I promise you 7 years. Give me a 7-year test and see what I can do. Indeed. Okay, let me ask you this. And by the way, everybody, if you have a question, put your word question in all caps. I know David would love to answer any questions that he can in our remaining time, which isn't a lot. But we're in Israel. We see the evacuees. I think it's 60,000 evacuees from the northern territory are moved out.
Yeah. By the way, including the people who live in my apartment right now. I've got a family living in my apartment that have been evacuated from the northern part because they're literally within eyeshot of the border with Lebanon. What the Hezbollah has been doing is, instead of firing rockets that the Iron Dome can take, they're firing anti-tank rockets into civilian populated houses. And you can't live in a house that is within eyeshot of, I mean, and just think, you're going to have to move out all the neighborhoods that are next to Tijuana because people are just shooting rockets from one side of the border to the other side. It's a critical, and Israel will have to solve this problem.
Yeah.
And again, it might be in the form of somebody that comes.
Okay, well, that was going to be my question to you, because just talking with the people in the hotels, the evacuees, it's been, what, 7 months now, 7.5 months. They're exhausted, or almost 7 months. They're tired. They want to go back home. So this has to be resolved, and I don't see where Israel can just move the people back into their homes while Hezbollah remains an existential threat, because they are. You know, I mean, how would you move back home when you know? I remember. I mean, you know these things, right? How could you move back home like that? But they desperately want to get home. So this can't go on forever like this.
Well, I think I saw the Israeli Ministry of Defense said yesterday, day before yesterday, that we are ready and posed to go into Rafah, but it might take months to finish it off.
Wow.
That means that it's not going to end tomorrow anyway, which means we're in a long, outdrawn kind of situation. But maybe this is where my call has come in. This is what the Balagan Connection is doing. What I need to do here, Tom, is say this. The ability of Israel to withstand its enemies is depending on the support that we get from governments in the Western world. The erosion of that support, okay, is actually changing the political situation in the United States. We're watching it happen, okay? And that is bringing more pressure to bear on Israel as far as the way that they actually execute this war against Hamas, okay? And in that situation, I'm hearing the other side being much more noisy than this side. And somehow we've got to, and I know that you and me are on the same side with this. We've got to raise up and at least make some noise. We have to remind our governments, our legislative governments, our representatives, that there is a pro-Israel element that they have to take into consideration. Because if we're quiet, then Israel's going to be thrown under the bus more than it is already.
I think with the political side, I am very discouraged by what I see coming from America. It doesn't surprise me. I watched what happened during the Obama administration, but at the same time, we do know biblically Israel will be isolated when they turn to the Lord and the Lord saves them. That day is coming, and I think, you know, this is only speculation, but I believe this is part of that process where God is leading Israel that way. And I from my perspective, it's only the evangelical community that seems to be supporting Israel right now. And they might be evangelicals coming out of China. I mean, when we were there, David, we were the only tour group we saw almost anywhere. Capernaum, Caesarea, almost anywhere. When we got to Jerusalem, we saw a few small tour groups like from Indonesia and other places, but it's predominantly evangelical Christian support from, whether it be South America, Mexico, parts of Africa, Asia. That's it. And the support is getting smaller and smaller. And I'm at this place now where I believe the number one thing I can do when it comes to the gospel of Jesus Christ in the nation of Israel is share the hope of Jesus with every Jew that I know. And and with the nation of the people of Israel too. I love going there. I can't wait to go back. I want to take another group back there as soon as possible. But I believe we're in this place where it really needs to be done. And those of us who believe we are genuine believers, make it a point. This is what we're about. We're looking at the finish line. Hey, let's make the rest of our life count and understand we're on God's side. This is a question that Pookie Martinez has for us. I know you've heard Pookie before. He's been on James' channel with you a couple times asking questions.
I got it.
We as followers of Christ are on Yahweh's side. So Israel at this time seems to not be on his side. So is God on Israel's side now? How does that reconcile? Interesting question, Pookie. I would say Israel not being on his side in the sense of um, it's still, there's a lot of religion in Israel. Maybe he's meaning secular. The majority of Israel is still secular, from what I understand, although they might celebrate. It was your friend Ronnie Winter who was with us in Israel, and I think he said something like 80% of Israel is still secular, although the majority of them still celebrate Shabbat and things like that.
So a couple of words about Judaism, Israel, and I don't know how many people. Okay, Judaism is a nationality, a race, and a religion. Okay, we're of the Jewish religion. Now, there's different variations, but probably not. That means that we are all Jews by race and nationality, but we are also by religion. The thing is this. The religion that we celebrate, or the religion that we adhere to, most of Israelis and most Jews, is the religion of the Old Testament. Most Jews, even though Jesus came from the Jewish trunk and branched out, most Jews do not accept Jesus as the Savior, as the Messiah, but we still celebrate the traditional Judaism as with variations as he would have it. Which means, first of all, most Israelis are more religious than American, and our secular Israelis are more religious than secular Americans. That being said, though, there is a upgrowing of religious fervor in Israel. Israel is going back to its gods. And I want most of the people sitting in the United States who are Christian to kind of connect to Israel as the people that Jesus was teaching in the Galilee. When Jesus goes from place to place, he's teaching Jews, most of them Jews, and he's speaking a language that they understand. I believe that we as Christians today have to speak to the Jews in the language that they understand, in the calling that they understand, and remind them that we as Christians, we are not against them because they're Jewish. We are for them. We love them because we're Jewish, and we want to bring them with us to this different place where the one Messiah actually has come to save the world, and we've just now celebrated that 2 days ago. So what I'm trying to say is, yes, you're right. What we need to do is bring Jesus to the Jewish people. It's harder to do it in Israel, and I'm going to ask the people watching us if that's okay. If you don't mind, my people need Jesus. Reach out to Jews that you have around you. Connect to them. Don't connect to them. Don't bring the Christianity from the top. Bring the Christianity through their Judaism and connect to them at that point. That's where we need to go. I mean, we just now celebrated Purim. Purim is a whole story of God saving us from, by the way, from Iran. We've already done that, okay? And use the Jewish celebrations. We're on the way into Passover. Connect. I mean, if you guys know anything, Jesus is the Passover lamb. The Last Supper was a Passover meal of Jews sitting around the meal. The traditions, the blessings that Jesus does at the Passover meal are Jewish. Get yourself connected to the Passover event. Get yourself connected to a Passover meal. Join your Jewish friends and bring Jesus through their Judaism. Not as opposed to it, but as an enhancement of that Judaism, and I think that's what we need to do.
I think that's great. David, you know, I've shared this with you before, but I've had opportunities to meet some Jewish friends that are Jewish, not Jewish believers, but Orthodox and so forth, and I thoroughly enjoy it. I understand the Old Testament well enough to really be able to connect with them, so that helps a lot, but it's just bringing them, it's like, it's really easy to connect if you just go back to some of the Jewish roots. And I will say this, David, you haven't been there in a while, but when we were in Israel, there's definitely an openness to hearing about Jesus that I've never seen there before. And as both Jew and Muslim that I was able to share with, there was one gentleman, he was our taxi driver. I was coming back from Herzliya to Tel Aviv, and I was in the taxi by myself with him, and he's wearing a kippah, so I knew he's Jewish. And we got on the subject of Jesus, and for a minute I thought he was going to kick me out of his taxi somewhere along the Mediterranean. But I softened it up a little bit and just said, hey, Yeah, it turned out to be a great conversation, but the willingness, there's still a willingness there to engage. He wasn't interested in hearing that Jesus was the Messiah, but he was interested in engaging in a conversation. And it was so worth it. Janet B asks this question: what does Balagan mean? Pardon me, but I'm a newbie. Regardless, Janet, you probably wouldn't know what Balagan was anyways if David didn't make it part of our popular culture here.
Well, let's start off. I'm going to be putting on, because more and more people have been asking me on the Balagan channel what Balagan means. Okay, so probably somewhere towards the end of this week, the beginning of next week, there will be a podcast on my channel that explains Balagan. So I'll go into what. But Balagan means mess, things that don't go according to plan. Balagan could mean little things. Me spilling this cup of coffee here would be a balagan here in the middle of this podcast, and you'd say, what a balagan? Balagan could mean big things. It means rockets falling in downtown Jerusalem. That would be a big balagan. If you want a good meaning of balagan, you've got a president that his middle name should be Balagan. I mean, that's a Balagan.
That's
Balagan. Explains everything, and the whole political situation right now, what's going on in the United States, is a big Balagan. But it's also, it's not completely negative. Balagan is fun. I mean, the party was an amazing Balagan. I mean, it's a Balagan parade. I mean, we had a good time. And if you go to Purim, we're supposed to, Purim, during the celebration of Purim, we're supposed to have a party and, and make a lot of noise. That's a Balagan. So it actually comes from Persian. And I give you, originally the word in Persian, the word balcony and Balagan come from the same Persian root. And the balconies were where they had the sideshows in the markets, the lady spitting the fire and that kind of stuff. It went into most of the European languages. It means mess up in Polish. In Hungarian, they have another word that's connected. In Russian, it means circus. So the word in Russian, you go to Russia, and it's a Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey Balagan.
That's what we have in the administration with Biden. We have a circus.
Oh, you guys.
we have a definite circus. By the way, everybody, again, I'll be in Buena Park, California this coming Saturday for the Eagle Forum Conference with Alex Newman. You can check that at hopeforourtimes.com. All right, final question. Kevin Snyder says, does Israel fear the Biden administration?
Yes, definitely. And if you want something that you can do to help Israel today, put President Trump back in the White House. I mean, that's, if you ask me what I would like you to do more than anything, I think that is critical. That will change the whole dynamic in what's going on.
I believe it would probably change it like within 24 hours.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, we look at this whole world is become a Balagan. It is what a mess. David.
So my job is to connect the Balagan in the pieces.
Amen. So again, everybody, you can connect with David at the Balagan Connection, and then also here, make sure you like, subscribe, and share. Go to David's channel, do that, and check out. He's going to be describing Balagan. And he has outstanding videos, everyone. I mean, just absolutely outstanding. You're going to learn so much by going there about the nation of Israel, facts, history, you name it. You'll be super blessed. Also, here, like, subscribe, share. Again, I know it might sound repetitive. It might not mean much to you guys, but it really does mean a lot to us. It helps with the algorithms. Just to do those three things. They're free: like, subscribe, and share the videos. Tomorrow, Kurt Reed is going to be joining me at 2:00 p.m. And looking forward to that. Thank you for joining us in the chat today, too, Kurt. David, thank you for staying on a little bit extra, longer than normal. It was great having you here. And maybe, just maybe, I can hook up with you in Israel or something when you're there. Maybe I can get over there.
Let's do that.
I can sneak over there.
I got a couple of plans on that one. We'll talk.
Okay, we need to talk. All right. Thank you, everybody. God bless.